there is a lot of detoxing, emotional detoxing, and you're able to cry a lot, you're able to sweat, you're able to tremble, you're able to really let it out. And that's very powerful, I think, to live a true and healthy life, a life based on honesty. That's why I feel so uncomfortable whenever situations feel dishonest to me.
Welcome to Character. I'm Anne Benveniste. These are honest conversations with New Yorkers who inspire me about their journey to figuring out who they are, what they want to say, and the role the city played in the process. My guest today is Delfina Baldassarre. Delfina is an Argentinian artist and fashion designer who lives and works here in Brooklyn. She's especially known for her modern and non-traditional bridal line, but she also has a really cool ready-to-wear line where I personally get a lot of my wardrobe. Delfina actually started her career as a psychoanalyst and a sommelier in Buenos Aires before she launched into design shortly after moving to New York. We discuss how she navigated this journey, including the powerful role that ayahuasca has had on her ability to create this beautiful career and life for herself. So let's dive in. I love the way you and I met. I was having just a very kind of intuitive day with myself, shopping around Brooklyn. It was like sunny. I think it was like last June. And I saw this sign, like open studio. And I just had one of those like moments in your body when you're like, I have to go here. You're like a very like playful way. And I walk up into this and
in the sign, it's this garment.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's the ayahuasca garment.
Yeah.
Oh my God, amazing. And so, yeah, I walked up here and I just immediately was like, I love this person and I loved your clothes. I bought a bunch of stuff and it's such a privilege to be able to talk to you about your journey because I think it's super inspiring. You've had so many, different stages of your career and your life. In talking to you about that journey, you've executed that in such from my perspective, a very intuitive way. And so, yeah, let's talk about kind of where you started from.
It's funny that you say that it was very intuitive because it was, but at the very, very beginning, early stages, I'm talking like 2012, when I shifted and I started the collection, I was feeling actually insecure. I had not gone to school for design or art or related. And that was giving me a little bit of insecurity. It's like, oh, if I don't have all these tools, am I going to be able to actually do it? But I had my training was in psychology and psychoanalysis and wine.
Why did you choose those paths to begin with?
Well, Argentina, it's a very classic country in a way, classic culture, especially when it comes to education. At that moment, at least, which, we're talking about, 15, 20 years ago, if you were going to college, it was for classic degrees such as law and medicine and architecture and psychology. Like, you couldn't be an artist. You could not go to school for fashion. I don't even think that my parents would have allowed me,
I get that. My parents definitely wouldn't have allowed that. They'd be like, many are called, few are chosen. This is too risky.
My elementary school and my high school, I went to the same school all my life. And it was a school that was focused on literature. A ton of the subjects were inclined to a lot of like the human mind and literature and like analysis of characters and psychology. So it was just very logical that after all that training all my life, I would just go for psychology. Also, my grandfather is a psychologist. My uncle is a psychologist, Not that they were huge influences for me, but still there. Yeah. And then midway of that, I found that I wanted to make my relationship to wine a little bit more formal. And I loved it. It was the beginning of the degree in Argentina. Like, I think that the school had established a year or two before I started. And it was something very new and super cool. I loved it. What I didn't anticipate was that it was going to be so rigorous and so much studying these names by heart, a million names in like German, French, and like languages that I didn't speak at the moment. So I realized, oh my God, I'm really doing like another degree here. But I loved it because all my teachers were incredible. And then a lot of my teachers moved to France and have Michelin restaurants and stuff like that. I did briefly work in Argentina as a sommelier, but just immediately after I moved to New York.
Yeah.
And then whenever I moved to New York and I was just trying to figure out if I was going to go fully on design or I was going to try with wine for a moment, I did actually have interviews for like wine. And I did sort of like shadow a few times as sommelier at the moment. And oh my God, it was so intense. The restaurants and like the nightlife and like there was a lot of that. And I think that quickly it became obvious to me that
It wasn't the right.
That I was going to continue with design, which ultimately is what I have moved here for.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about that. But I think like just to, underline that point, I think what you did is exactly right. When you shadow someone and you just like get a feel for it, you can actually see in practice, do I want to do this? Because it sounds to me like academically, intellectually, you really enjoyed it, but the energy of actually the actual job felt wrong. So that is a great way to quickly kind of align yourself to what feels right. But let's talk about like that, the moment, which I think is interesting. You're a psychoanalyst. You kind of have this sommelier degree in Argentina. So how did you end up in New York as a designer? And like, what was that realization that actually, I'm not sure I want to be a psychoanalyst. I think I want to be a designer.
Well, again, it was very personal because my husband at the time, he was a designer. Mm-hmm. He actually was a graphic designer and from New York. So we would travel quite often and I really loved his lifestyle, the way that he worked and the way that he communicated his design. And also we would come to New York fairly often. So I would get to know a lot of other designers in New York. And I always looked at it with a lot of desire, like, oh my God, I would love to do that or have this kind of life or live in that neighborhood. Everything created a lot of desire for me and I wanted to make that my life. And that's really how it happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's important about that is just that you felt in your body, like, I want this. Whenever you feel like excited about something and you have almost like an envy or a jealousy or like, ooh, I want that too. Not to say that those are were your emotions, but oftentimes when you see something and you're like, I want that for myself, that's the universe telling you to like go this way.
Yeah.
Right. And do you feel that there was like any hesitation around like, I've spent all this time and energy getting these other degrees or any nervousness around like, oh, but design is like maybe not as stable as these other, did that come up for you at all?
Yes. The beginning, as I'm telling you, because all the people that then I created a very big network and a lot of people that helped me a lot at the beginning, and they all went to Parsons. All these people that were like super academically prepared, doing their things, but didn't have that. And as I'm telling you, that at the beginning gave me insecurity that how am I gonna? I don't have those tools. But then whenever you're like in practice and whenever you're learning in like very different ways, such as spending weeks and months inside a factory, these things you just ingrain them in your...
You spent weeks and months inside a factory?
Well, yeah, here, whenever like I started, I would go to my factory every day and I would like spend time with the sewers and they would explain so many things to me. At this point, I am an expert in an education that was given to me more like by working in the field.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. And some people are like, oh, I need to go to school. And of course, there's benefits to that. But your point here is like, you can also just learn that on the job if you immerse yourself.
Yes, by immersion, exactly. At the beginning, to me, was a very hard idea because I've learned in a country that it's such a hard country in like you study this and you work on this your entire life. That's what you're choosing for the rest of your life. And that's what people do. And like people stay in unhappy jobs for the rest of their lives.
I think obviously like a younger generation has a different viewpoint.
I'm telling you because of my sister. She's one generation younger. Mm-hmm. And I see that my sister belongs to a different planet. We are only 10 years apart.
Yeah. I think the impact of the phone and the internet and what that gives you as a channel.
The way they live, their preoccupations. My sister is preoccupied with awesome stuff. I admire her very deeply in the way that she is. She's an activist and like she lives in Madrid, helps her friends to have citizenship. She doesn't believe in heteronormative situations. They live in such a free way. And I think it's amazing. It's just 10 years apart.
Yeah, well, I think that that's what's exciting. I mean, certainly like from a career and lifestyle perspective, I think the world is shifting and what used to be like the traditional way of building your life is really crumbling. And I think for anyone who's maybe born in the 80s or earlier, a lot of those people who are listening to this podcast are like looking around, or even in the early 90s, right, are looking around and being like, actually, the way that I was brought up to think about my career and my life is kind of no longer relevant, or there's these
Exactly. I don't think it's relevant. So I think that there is a lot of deconstruction to be done.
Yes.
And I like to keep myself updated with all those things. And a way that I do that is I surround myself with a lot of young people that keep me on track.
Totally. I think being surrounded by different generations and younger, right, I think is really good for your mental health.
Oh, my friends range from like 20 years to like 85. And my 85-year-old friend is one of my favorites. She's insanely amazing. I'm very open in that way. And I like it. I like to be that open in that way. And I have very strong connections with the whole rainbow of ages.
Totally. Well, I think, one of the foundational principles from my work around, fulfillment is just people and connecting with people and talking to people and really being like really open to life in that way and talking about who you are and what you're trying to figure out and all of that. And so I can see, you do that quite naturally.
Yeah.
Okay, but so let's talk about this moment of, so where we were kind of in the journey is, you were coming here with your husband at the time, who was a graphic designer, and you were like, oh, I really like this lifestyle. I'm like in love with New York. Like I can feel in my body that this feels so much better. You moved to New York. How did you become the designer? Like, what was that moment? Because I think that story is quite cool.
The moment that I launched the Tunics.
Tell us the Tunics.
So I have been in New York at this point for around 10 months. I started, as soon as I arrived here, I started doing interior design. I don't know if I told you this.
Yes, you did.
I worked on a few projects here and there, but then just naturally I transitioned to clothes and fashion, which had always been a passion of mine. I just didn't know that you could actually make a career out of it. I found myself without an interior design project. So I was like, we were just back from a trip from Tulum, that at the time, like Tulum was cool. And we had like a really nice vacation and like Tunic state of mind. And so I came here and I just started going to the garment district and like texting some friends that were in the industry and asking them a few tips. I think I remember I didn't put an ad on Craigslist that I was looking for someone that can sew. And this I'm talking about extremely early stages. And then in exactly 1 month, I created a collection, which is like an insane time frame. But I didn't even know what creating a collection meant. I was just doing. I was like, this is cool and this top could be cool. And like this green top, I can use this fabric as a top that could look really nice. And I was just like experimenting. And then I wanted to make a party to show my friends what I have been up to. And at the time I lived in Greenpoint and I did like a lounge party with like friends and in the backyard. And some of my friends brought people from the industry, and to that party came editors, and then it came the owner of a wholesale showroom. And she liked what I have done, and she offered me if I wanted to start selling wholesale. I didn't really know what that meant, obviously, because I was, as I'm telling you, that those are the gaps that I don't have because I didn't go to school for this. So then, at the time, my husband was extremely supportive to me, really encouraged me to take the opportunity and to keep in this path. And so I did. So a month after I had launched that party, I was selling at this really beautiful showroom in Mercer Street and seeing all these like buyers from like Japan, the best stores in New York, got a ton of orders. And that's really how it got started, because that was my first wholesale market, and I'm still in market.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what's beautiful about that story is, how intuitive it was. It wasn't like you were like, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to sell into wholesale. And when you have that, sometimes there becomes this like heaviness or pressure on it. But how you were creating was just from your soul, right?
It was very light.
Very light. Exactly. Yeah. And it was like playful. I feel inspired because I was in Tulum. I feel inspired and I've always loved clothes. It's almost like a creative hobby that you were doing on the side, which is so many people that I work with, they're stuck because they aren't being like playful with themselves outside of what they do for work, right? I think finding ways to express your interests, whatever they might be, and create stuff because it's fun to create or you're inspired to do something.
I also want to add something about what you're saying, which is, yes, it was very light and very unintentioned, but sometimes I wish that I had a plan. You know what I'm saying? Because, for example, the idea of a business plan or having a business plan came many, many years after, whenever you have to talk to investors and things like that. And it's very hard to gather all the information that you need because everything is a mess. Like all the numbers are in like whatever spreadsheets. And like, I just really wish that I could have had a system, a more organized system. But because you don't know what you're doing, you can't. So these are like the pros and the cons, right?
Yeah. I would say like you create, so oftentimes what gets in people's way is just like starting and beginning and having that like first initial thing that's like not perfect, right? And so what I want to underline is just how you were following something because it was like sparkly and fun and you wanted to create, and that collection was like for your friends, right?
Yeah.
And okay, maybe after you got the wholesale buyer, you could have sat down and done a proper business plan.
Yeah.
But I think from my experience and my training as a coach, everyone is different. But if it's too rigid and it's too, it prevents the creation process.
Yeah.
So I just love that you were doing it because you were inspired and excited. And I think this is why it just moved so quickly. And you found it was, again, like you were saying, it like the creativity came from your soul, not because you're like, I'm going to design a collection that people in Japan are going to want to buy.
Yeah.
Right? It was like an authentic expression instead of like an overly thought through expression.
Yeah.
Then you're in wholesale and you're building this business. And now, I mean, you've had a couple different iterations of the business and now you have a huge bridal line and that's actually kind of the main part of your
that's
business.
nice what you're saying because it really, the bridal, non-traditional bridal or the bridal for modern brides actually was born with the same essence. And what I mean for this is that my muse was getting married and we obviously were going to work together. And then she really unlocked all these cool ideas because she's an incredible woman with an incredible energy and so inspiring. So we started working together and then I was like, and what if we do this and that and that? So there were like 15 concepts in the air that I wanted to do. And obviously we were doing like 2 garments only. This was not possible.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, maybe this is time that I put this into a collection because one thing that is very hard for me is to have an idea and not execute it. I mean, it's not even hard. I don't do that. If I have an idea, I execute it. And this going back to my beginnings, whenever I wasn't a designer, I was creative and I would have a ton of ideas and I would have like genuine ideas, right, that came from me. And then I had an idea and a few weeks after I would see it on a magazine or I could see it on a blog or I could see it somewhere. And I was like, oh my God, I guess it was a good idea. You know, I should have done it. So then there was a point that I didn't want to have this feeling anymore. To me, it's mandatory that whenever there is an idea, there is execution, because otherwise the idea, then there are a lot of consequences. If you don't execute, then there is like frustration, the idea that the other one did it, how you would have done it, and all these thoughts. So I live in peace now.
Wait, I love this concept because I'm doing a lot of reading around creative process and both, you know, I don't know if you've read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act.
I did.
Yeah. And also this woman, Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, but she also wrote a book called Big Magic. Both of them talk about this idea of like an idea whose time has come. As a creative person, right, you're connected. I mean, we can talk a little bit about your spiritual beliefs, but I think when you get a creative idea, it's like almost an idea in the energy, right? It's you, but it's also like in the energy of the culture. And the universe has to know, I mean, this is my spiritual belief, but this is what they both say. Like the universe has to know, like you are a good conduit. You're going to actually make the idea happen. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you get the idea and you don't make it happen, the idea goes to someone else who's going to make it happen, right? So this is very interesting to me, but also because it's something I've been struggling with in my own rebranding and relaunching of my business for a long time. I had all of these ideas, but I was in this place of like, you know, it has to be perfect and I have to do this first and that first. And so like all of these ideas like were trapped in me. And it is the most infuriating feeling to like have ideas, but like not actually be creating them. And so now I try and do exactly what you're doing. Like as soon as I have something, I like create a little video, or like I start writing the concept, or, I've like written a third of a book. And you know what I mean? I'm just taking, like, whenever the idea comes, I try and create it just to show myself that I trust myself and that I am creating, and also to show the universe that like I am acting on my insights.
You're acting upon, yes. So in my case also, there is every day, it's very active, this collection, this business, this office. That time I wasn't that clear in these concepts, I didn't have this confidence that you build over the years, because at the beginning the collection was very, very experimental. As I'm telling you, I started with Tunic and like beachwear. And then my second collection, because I was in a formal wholesale business, I had to create a second collection. And then fall came and I didn't know what to do because I am like, what? So then it was a little bit of a struggle because I was a little lost. Also, who am I as a creative, as a designer? What's my aesthetic? That took years to build. And I feel that the year that I actually started having like a very, very visible signature was in in the collection Spring-Summer 2016. If you go to my website and you see that collection, you're like, oh, I recognize this because this is the collection where I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am. So it took like 4 years to get there. So that means 8 collections or more, because at the time the showroom was asking me also for other stuff. Just a little bit lost in or not lost, but just finding who I was. So at the beginning was very experimental.
Yeah, that's great. I love the narrative of just like keeping going till you find the thing. Because I feel like that's a little bit where I am in my business. I started this business 5 or 6 years ago and it was like good for the moment, but like I evolved, and I feel like with this podcast and some of the new stuff I'm talking about, I feel like, oh yeah, this is my lane, at least my lane for now, and who knows how I will evolve and who knows how your work will evolve.
I have a hint.
Oh, tell me. Top tip.
No, I've been having like the urge for the past few years. The thing is that I was focused on other things, but I've had the vision of creating textile artworks. So that is where I'm going now. So yeah, I'm going to Peru at the end of the month, and I'm actually going to start working on like textile artworks. Something that it helps me is not looking too much. For example, I don't look very much at Instagram feed, and I don't look very much at fashion shows, or maybe I should, because maybe that could inform me so much about what's relevant. But I feel that also gives me contamination. In my case, rather just, I don't care if the thing that I'm going to do is cool, but like I'm going to do it. And I really prefer to refrain from a lot of social media and looking too much. I don't want to feel that at the end that came from somebody else's work.
I totally get that. I feel that way with coaching. I don't follow, people are always sending me like, oh, here's another career coach's site or newsletter. I'm like, another coach's whatever. I'm like, I really don't want to see this because it's just going to taint what I want to say. I think anyone who's really aligned and like expressing themselves in the world has done work on themselves in some way, because, we all go through hard stuff in different capacities. And
listen, I've had a therapist or a psychoanalyst for the past 22 years with the same person. My longest relationship.
Oh,
I hate to say this because we've done so much work together, and I'm sure that she thinks that I'm, in a sense, a product of our relationship. But a much stronger work started fueled by the ayahuasca.
And this is why psychedelics are so important, I think, because it's just lightning. It's so deep. It's so quick. I mean, I think it's helpful to have done a little bit of work on yourself before you go in.
To be able to contextualize.
Yeah. I know you had a really powerful ayahuasca journey.
Yes.
What brought that about? Where were you in your life and how did it support you?
So the real reason why I got into it was because I had been divorced for a year at this point. The pain that I was carrying was something that I was not able to overcome. So it really started for like more personal reasons. And then someone took me to a ceremony, and it wasn't the best ceremony or it wasn't like an amazing experience, but I did see potential in the experience. So I knew that there was something there to like keep exploring. And also the ayahuasca is not a one-time ceremony session situation. It's a process. And I'm happy I was able to also see that and keep going and keep going. It was in New York and upstate with like so many people. But then because I produce my collection in Lima, Peru, I get to go there quite often. And, it's part of their culture. It's part of their ancestral culture to work with this plant. And a lot of my friends have done it. And my good friend, Carmencita, she recommended me her shaman. And that's when my real work started. And that was 2019. And I felt at the moment that I needed to really immerse myself in the plant. And, so I started doing it quite often and many times while I was in Lima. And every ceremony was powerful, different, and it felt like an evolution from the last one. And I really felt that the machine was started to get like oiled and working, and it was incredible. Eventually the pain completely went away fairly quickly, actually. But then I kept doing it because I like the collaterals.
What were some of those collaterals?
I stopped drinking alcohol, which to me was life-changing. But not just that. The reason why I stopped drinking alcohol is because for every ceremony, you have to detox a lot. The first thing that you have to detox from, it's alcohol and any sort of drug that can alter you. Then I found myself detoxing fairly often. And I liked it. And then, it just felt natural to keep going without it. But that was one collateral, for example, that I was never in a million years like looking for, and it just happened.
Yeah.
At that point, I could, smoke a cigarette here and there or have an MDMA here and there. And like now I don't see myself doing anything, like absolutely nothing, nothing at all.
Do you feel like it's helped your creativity or you helped what's the impact of detoxing?
Well, yeah. So that was one. Then these things work a little bit maybe as a domino perhaps, but also I think that there is a necessity after every ceremony to go and give sense of what you've just experienced, right? Because it's like a very intense night and everything comes with so much intensity and like so much color in a sense. And then you have to unpack this. And the way that I immediately started doing it was drawing. So drawing my experience and like all these drawings that I could do just to relax. And it would last for a few weeks to a month or something that like I could draw all the time. And this also helped me see some different drawings that I've never done. They were coming up after the ceremonies. At that point, this is whenever the prints for my collection became very central because people were really responding to that. So yeah, and those are my drawings after the ceremonies.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. I know that collection. Which one is it?
So this is the first one that like everybody bought.
Come back to the mic and let's talk about it. Amazing.
I've sold millions of these things.
Yeah, I love that. We'll have to take a picture of that so people can see it.
That outfit that I made with my drawings, every time that people come to a studio and are like, oh, I have a birthday, I have a talk, I have, something that they want to feel super special and a little bit of the center, they go for that garment. And I sell it a lot for like rehearsal dinners, chill weddings, something that like people like love.
I love that because I've not done ayahuasca, but my experience doing psychedelics, right, is that it just opens up the unconscious within you. It opens up a portal in a way to you. And so to kind of use that to express your creativity, it's like so authentic.
Very authentic. That's why I respect so much this plant and, the use of it and people that like really can understand it in a similar way that I do. And in many ways, personal, and as I'm sharing with you with my work professionally, you're able to rethink your entire existence from a completely different perspective. So you're able to think about situations in a very different way. You're able to forgive much faster. You're able to let people in or let people out with a different confidence because that's what this plant helps you to do. The collaterals is actually my life, the way that you are left to live after, and as I'm telling you, it's not a one-time thing. It's really a process. There is a lot of detoxing, emotional detoxing, and you're able to cry a lot. You're able to sweat. You're able to tremble. You're able to really let it out. And that's very powerful, I think, to live a true and healthy life, a life based on honesty. That's why I feel so uncomfortable whenever situations feel dishonest to me.
Yeah, because you can really feel the bad vibration.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can start feeling people in a very different way. That's why all the people that I met after all these experiences are people that I feel that are like aligned in like the way that I live, now or after those ceremonies, in the priorities. It also, I think that it gives a fine tuning to your priorities.
Amazing. I have a couple questions. New York is obviously like such an inspiring city, and you moved here because you were so, attracted to the energy and the creativity and all of that, as you said. But it also can be a very intense city, right? And it can be very draining. So, as a creative person, how do you stay connected to yourself and your creativity in the midst of a city like New York? Do you find yourself out of tune, and then how do you get yourself back into tune?
I think that something very fundamental about living in New York is to have the ability to get out. I do that because I take trips, but mainly because I produce somewhere else. So I have to be in Peru quite often, which is a place that inspires me in a very different way, but I find it very, very inspiring. Every 6 or 8 weeks or whenever I have to go, I love to go there. I love to immerse myself in like the actual sample room and the fabrics and the processes that we do down there, but then also to come back. There is no better feel for me than to go back to New York, But of course, you have to get out. That's, to me, the most necessary and important thing to like keep connected.
How long have you been in New York now?
Since 2011.
So, in those 14 years, what do you think's been the greatest lesson being in New York has taught you?
Well, a big one is that hard work pays off. And it's very simple, sorry. In other places in the world, that might not happen. You can work extremely hard and it doesn't pay off because society is not supporting you, because the economy is not supporting you, because the political turmoil, or, I come from Argentina, that it's like a pretty intense country in that way. I don't know where I would have started over there, I learned to do things over here. I don't find everywhere in the world. In other places, working is not the first priority or the first value, other things, which is completely fine, like family or like recreation or whatever. If one of your top priorities is growing professionally, I think this is a place top players want to come.
If you like New York and if you like that, if you're ambitious and you're creating something and the city inspires you, it's the most inspiring place because you're surrounded with other people like that. And, that's really what this podcast is about.
I always think where I would live if it wasn't in New York, and I don't find it. I don't really find it. My partner and I are starting to fantasize where are we going to retire. And that is a very attractive idea, because we're like hopping all over Europe. We have some years until that. So
a few things to do before then.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Delfina, what a pleasure and privilege it was to chat. I loved our conversation. I knew it was going to be amazing, and it delivered. So thank you for being open to this, and for
thank you for you wanting to do this, like your intelligence and your presence. And
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, fab. Thanks for tuning into Character. I hope these stories inspire you to trust yourself, bet on yourself, and do the work where needed. You are the artist of your life. Go create something unique and awesome. Don't forget to subscribe to the Character Substack. The link is in the show notes. Here you'll get photos of each guest in their creative space, alongside their New York City recommendations. I also share my analysis as a coach on why each guest is so aligned and thriving. And if you're enjoying the show, follow or leave a review. It helps other people like you find and get value from the podcast too. The music on this podcast was arranged by the New York-based artist, DJ, producer, and underground legend, Michael Magnan.